welcome to another edition of Coffee with the Goose, where we talk about things that are interesting, fascinating, and irritating. And I am Mr. Irritating, and I'm proud of it. I'm the Goose. Glad to have you join me again. Let's get back to boxing, shall we? But before we do that, hey, got to have our mojo, right? Or a cup of joe, I should say. My coffee. Yeah, there's coffee in it this time, I promise. I'm not saying there wasn't last time. Well, we'll let you think about that. My coffee, as you know, very strong, like my opinion. Got some creamer in there to make it sweet, just like me. All right, let's talk boxing. What's the latest? You got me. Still no word. We're all dying to see who Pacquiao is going to fight next, or for that matter, who anybody's going to fight next. I was reminded of something humorous with MMA recently in masks, which I'm so tired of masks. Yeah, I know their usefulness, and but that's about it. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. Okay, I'm only wearing a mask when they tell me I have to. But I was made aware of the fact that these MMA fights, empty arena, no fans allowed, because it's dangerous. They're wearing masks during the face-off, and then they go bleed all over each other with no masks. So there you go. Makes no sense. Boxing, no less violent, and makes no more sense than that, as you know. So who's Pacquiao going to fight next? To me, it's really down to two guys. I've dismissed Mikey Garcia, respectfully, as you know. Keith Thurman ain't getting no rematch. Sorry, Keith. Sean Porter doesn't have a belt. And, you know, I love Sean Porter. He's a real man, but he ain't going to get it either. Danny Garcia, probably not. And that really leaves the two title holders. That's Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. I should say the other two title holders. There are four belts: the IBF, the WBC, WBO, WBA, right? Okay. The three remaining title holders are Errol Spence Jr., Terrence Crawford, and Manny Pacquiao. Our next show, we'll talk about the possibility of the matchup between Pacquiao and Terrence Crawford. But this show, we'll talk about Pacquiao and Errol Spence Jr. Now, it's the car crash back in October notwithstanding, I still think this is going to be a great matchup. Number one, Errol Spence Jr. is undefeated. He's what's his record? He's 27-0, I believe. I got a few notes here, I'll admit. I'm not so smart where I don't take any notes at all. Spence is unbeaten, and 26-0 with 21 KOs. And he's a tough guy. There's no question about it. He's 30 years old. He's from Dallas. He already had one belt before he fought Sean Porter, and he won another one after that fight. It wasn't boxing. That was a real fight. Sean Porter and Errol Spence Jr. And to Spence's credit, he toughed it out, got the knockdown. I believe it was the 11th round, and that made the difference. And he has two titles now, and he's a great fighter. He's the IBF and WBC welterweight champion. He is taller than Pacquiao. He's 5'10". Pacquiao was 5'5.5", so that's quite a big difference. He also has quite a reach advantage, 72 inches versus Pacquiao's 67. Now, of course, you can wipe all of those numbers out with just boxing skills, but you still need to keep those in mind. They play a big factor in the fight. One thing, first and foremost, we need to keep in mind: Pacquiao is a left-hander, and Spence is a right-hander. And what difference does that make? Well, if you play any sport at all, I love to play basketball. This holds true with basketball and football, and those two sports primarily, and boxing. If you're used to playing or fighting a right-hander, a conventional fighter, the left-hander is going to just mess with your head, whether you want to admit it or not. You know, and I've learned this firsthand. I'm left-handed, and I take advantage of it on the basketball court, I'll admit. But I've learned that when I play another left-hander, it messes with my head, and I'm left-handed. You're not used to it. There are different angles. They're coming from a different, different footwork, different side of the body they're using primarily, and it takes a lot of getting used to. And sometimes by the time you get it figured out, well, you've already lost. I mean, you better be ready. And to Spence's credit, he's undefeated, and he has a great resume, by the way. I can't really say that for Terrence Crawford. Spence has fought some big dogs. Yes, Mikey Garcia, I would consider him a big dog, at least in light welterweight. He's fought only, I believe, 3 times as a welterweight and lost once, and he hasn't really been that impressive. But we'll give Spence credit for that victory. He's also got the victory over Sean Porter, and that, hey, give the guy, big kudos for that victory. That was the real deal. He's also defeated Carlos Ocampo, Kell Brook, and others. So he's got a great resume. What does Pacquiao bring to the table, and what are his advantages in a fight against Errol Spence? He's no tougher than Spence. Spence he's a badass. Let's be honest. He's the real deal, and he will bully you. He's bigger than Pacquiao. He's younger, and he can knock him out. Let's make no mistake about it. You make a mistake against Errol Spence Jr., and you're going to end up on the floor. It happened with Sean Porter, and it can happen with Manny Pacquiao. Will it happen? Well, I don't know. It remains to be seen. But here are the advantages, in my opinion, that Pacquiao has over Errol Spence Jr. First of all, he's a left-handed fighter. Second, and Spence does not have this, and that is quick feet. That's always been an advantage for Manny Pacquiao. And footwork is really the name of the game in many sports, especially basketball, football to a degree, and boxing. If you have smart, quick feet and you know where to position yourself defensively and offensively, it can be a huge advantage for you. And we've seen this with Pacquiao. And as long as we're on the subject of good footwork, we have seen, and we mentioned the reach advantage that Spence has over Pacquiao. The good footwork can nullify that reach. We've seen it before. What Pacquiao does, and this is not recommended for most fighters, by the way, he steps to the right. He's always moving to his right. That way he's moving away from the right-hander's power punch, the right hand. So he's moving this way, okay? And he has the immense skill, the tremendous skill of stepping straight into the bigger man and delivering that straight left hand, which can be devastating. We've seen that many, many times. We saw it primarily against Oscar De La Hoya. It just made him quit. And also sent the great Tijuana fighter, what was his name against, too many names here, Jude, the big guy. It'll come to me. You guys already know it. Broke his eye socket. Yeah, it'll come to me. My old age is showing. But at any rate, it's a huge advantage for Manny Pacquiao. He's quicker on his feet, and he's smarter with his feet. Another advantage that he has is the quick hands. And again, that's not something that Errol Spence Jr. has. A great fighter, admitted, but he's not as quick with the hands as Manny Pacquiao is. And Pacquiao, matter of fact, he not only doesn't have the quick hands, but he stands, he's a straight-on fighter. He's going to come right at you. He's not coming in from the angles. You got it? Antonio Margarito, sorry. The hand wrap, remember that? Yeah. But, Antonio Margarito, Errol Spence Jr., they're similar. They're both bigger, they're both stronger, they both have greater reach than Pacquiao, they're both knockout artists, and well, we saw what happened to Margarito, didn't we? But Errol Spence Jr. is not a moving target. And if you're fighting against Pacquiao or any great legendary fighter, you've got to move not just your feet, but you've got to move your head, or you're going to be target practice. And Pacquiao, if he plays his cards right, and he usually does, will unload combinations on Errol Spence Jr. and then move out of the way. We've seen it happen many, many times. Here's another advantage that Manny Pacquiao has over Errol Spence Jr. Now, first of all, I've always said, and I'll remind you again, how much respect I have and admiration I have for Errol Spence Jr. as a fighter and a boxer. He's tough, he's young, he's strong, he's very skilled, and he's very smart. Is he as smart, or I shouldn't say smart, is he as smart? Does he have the same team behind him to work come up with a game plan specifically designed to defeat Manny Pacquiao? I'm not so sure about that. But with Pacquiao, he's got the legendary Hall of Fame trainer, Freddie Roach. And we saw many, many years ago, you may remember, Pacquiao was already a champion, but he was primarily a brawler and a left-handed knockout artist. And, Freddie Roach took him under his wing and taught him the ropes, turned him into a boxer, a two-handed boxer. Pacquiao can knock you out with the right hand as well. We've seen that on many occasions. So there's so many areas where Pacquiao has the advantage over Errol Spence Jr. He's quicker on his feet. He's got a better resume, more experience. He's got probably a better game plan, or is able to come up with a better game plan than Errol Spence Jr. He's quicker with his hands. He moves a lot better. And, he's, I really think that, and I'm not making a prediction now, and that, we'll dissect the matchup when the time comes, if they, announce that the match will actually happen. But for right now, I'm going to say that Pacquiao can and will defeat Errol Spence Jr. He's going to come up with a better game plan. He's more skilled. He's quicker. He's better on his feet. And, he has more experience. Errol Spence Jr., great fighter, but he's no match for Manny Pacquiao. And let's face it, Spence has only fought 26 times. Pacquiao has fought 72, 73 times. Yeah, Pacquiao's going to beat him. There's no question about it. It might end up a knockout, whoever wins, because these two guys both bring it. They're not there. Both of them. That's one thing they have advantage in common. They're not there to dance around and wink at the crowd and the cameras. That's not how these guys are. They're there to fight, and they're there to take you out. We've seen it with Spence. 21 out of his 26 fights, 26 wins, KO. Pacquiao, 39 of his 70 fights, KO. But with Pacquiao, many of those 39 KOs are legendary Hall of Fame boxers. Let's not forget that. Pacquiao may be 41, but we saw in his last outing where he took the WBA title from Keith Thurman. He doesn't carry himself like a 41-year-old. I picked Pacquiao in this fight. Let me know what you think. I read all the comments. I may not respond to all of them, but one thing I got to hand it to you guys. I may not be the best YouTuber out there. Well, close. But I got the best followers. I got the best subscribers. You guys are smart. You know your stuff. And I love to read your comments. Yeah, even if you think don't know what I'm talking about, let me know. And tell me why. Don't just tell me I'm an idiot. Okay, give me the facts, okay? I love to hear it, and I'm eager to, find out where I'm wrong and learn a little bit in the process, okay? That's it for this edition of Coffee with a Goose. So glad you joined me. Our next show, we're going to dissect a possible matchup between Manny Pacquiao and Terrence Crawford, another unbeaten young welterweight champion. So stick with us. Don't forget, you can join me on Facebook. It's Coffee with the Goose. Glad you joined me. You guys take care.